If you're one of those leftists who left Twitter in a petulant fit, well, you might want to come back because it's incredibly entertaining. In fact, one of your big heroes, scam-track Joe Biden, just embarrassed himself tremendously because he showed that he either doesn't know anything about ethics or doesn't know anything about economics or doesn't know anything about either. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. You know, there seems to be a slight difference between old, secretly censorious FBI-paid Twitter, which many of us found frustrating because the social media platform responded to government-tied pressure and hid our truthful posts about things like the authenticity of the Hunter Biden laptop. They flagged our posts about mask mandates and crushed posts mentioning the very low fatality rate of COVID-19. Well, there's a difference between the old Twitter, it seems, and Elon Musk's new Twitter/X, where Musk has welcomed back many who were banned, and he's ushered in a new asset called Community Notes, which provides all users the chance to contribute contextual information to posts that might be erroneous or misleading. The contrast is noticeable, and we might have seen its clearest example November 30th, when Smokin' Joe Biden used a snake oil sales gimmick to make an outlandish economic claim, and Twitter/X users called him out on it. Biden's oafish and absurd post seemed to be concocted to serve three purposes: to portray inflation as something it is not, to fool people into thinking that there is no more so-called inflation, and to lay blame for higher prices on business people whom he claimed are gouging. And so Biden claimed, quote, "Let me be clear to any corporation that hasn't brought their prices back down, even as inflation has come down. It's time to stop the price gouging. Give American consumers a break." The first and perhaps least obvious fact to note is Biden's deception about the nature of inflation. As I've told many an economics student, inflation is the artificial expansion of a money supply, typically inflated by governments or the central banks to which politicians give the fiat money creating power. Handing their out-of-thin-air created money to governments in the form of bond purchases and to special corporate interests in the form of artificially low interest rates, these central banks pump out money that bids up prices and sees malinvestment by market participants who incorrectly think the economy is sound and naturally expanding. As the price rises start to show themselves, consumers pull back their spending. The malinvestments and artificially high prices become revealed, and those artificially high priced assets, including jobs, well, they have to be liquidated. We see that scholars of the Austrian School of Economics end up terming the boom-bust cycle. It's the business cycle, they call it. So when Biden talks about inflation, he's actually talking about price increases that have resulted from the inflation of the money supply. And that brings us to his second, perhaps most obvious deception, his claim that inflation has come down. It is, of course, patently absurd, but Twitter/X didn't ban the man, didn't ban his deception, and didn't remove his false and misleading post. As any person or group interested in free speech might do, X let Biden speak and allowed people to respond. And boy, did the Twitter free speech community do so. The community folks, well, they noted precisely and correctly this, in part: as long as the inflation rate is positive, prices are increasing. The fact that inflation has come down to 3.2% in October means that prices are still going up, albeit at a slower rate than before. This is, of course, information you likely know and which I've offered at MRC TV. The fact that year-to-year price increases are continuing in a compounded manner, and the fact that we can recognize what appears to be an attempt to deceive. When a politician uses the term coming down to describe a month-to-month softening of the still upward slope of year-to-year price increases, it's wise to suspect him or her of deceptive intentions. In fact, as I mentioned last week for MRC TV, officially tracked prices have risen 17.7% since Biden entered office, fueled by the Trump-supported $2 trillion in Fed-fueled pork of the 2020 so-called CARES Act through Biden's insipidly named so-called Inflation Reduction Act and other insane DC moves such as showering over $110 billion in military loot to Ukraine. And that's a low estimate, by the way. Now, perhaps the most adroit response to Biden's attempted rhetorical parlor trick came from economics professor and Mises Institute scholar Per Byland, who wrote, quote, "Not how it works, Joe. Read my short book on how the economy works. It's free and so easy to understand, even a president might get it." Of course, this book is called How to Think About the Economy, a primer, and it is excellent. I recommend it for any economics student. But I wouldn't bet on Joe Biden reading it. President Biden is far too busy massaging his abysmal economic record and pushing the third aspect of that insulting November 30th post. The final insult of the whole thing comes in the form of Biden's attempt to claim that higher prices consumers might be suffering and trying to pay are the result of so-called gouging by businesses. You know, Joe, by their entrance into the market, businesses have to try to cater to consumers. If they charge more than what consumers will accept, those consumers are incentivized to turn to alternatives. And there are new opportunities for new sellers to enter the market. As opposed to government, which can demand our money at any time, redirect our earnings to things we didn't want to buy, such as Biden's favorite green corporate welfare recipients, and which can borrow on the backs of the unborn, free market participants have to ask for our business. Thus, they don't gouge. Even during periods of natural disasters, when bottled water prices might rise, those higher prices reflect an increase in consumer interest. And the new price information is essential to provide signals to potential entrants to move into the market and switch over from what they might have been doing previously. In fact, this incentivizes new entrants who will increase supply. Government and central bank inflation of the money supply and government spending warp all of those signals, and they turn them into monstrous things, showering human resources into areas where those resources would not have gone, seeing natural, temporal, and mental resources flow into these falsely appealing fields, and seeing the resultant waste revealed later as consumers pull back their spending to try to handle the price increases. Biden deserved to be schooled on November 30th and to receive umbrage for his typically slippery propaganda. It's all part of a dynamic, changing Twitter, I think. A Twitter environment that's seeing less governmental interference. Of course, if we could only use that term to apply to the U.S. economy, I think we'd all be better off. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please like and subscribe. Remember, find us on Rumble where they don't censor us. It's been wonderful seeing the number of people who have joined us over there. Please share the videos, give it the thumbs up, whether you're watching on Rumble or on YouTube. And we'll see you at MRCTV.org, MRCTV.org, where the whole team can be found. While you're there, please consider donating to the Media Research Center and check out the MRC Store as Christmas time comes around. Great items, lots of cool things to tweak leftists and reassure your friends that you're part of a kindred spirit of freedom lovers out there. And also, you can find us on TikTok, on Facebook, on Parler, on Instagram, and on Twitter/X, right near Per Byland. And if you want to find me on Gab, I'm at Gardner Goldsmith, and on Twitter/X, I'm at Gard, G-A-R-D, Goldsmith. For MRC TV, thanks so much for watching. I'm Gardner Goldsmith.